The inclusion of learning and work is one of the 6 main themes here at the WGS. Absolutely underscores the importance of emphasising education as one of, if not the main engine for building a more prosperous future. The morning focus here is the future of education. And forgive me, because I've just come in slightly late and in the middle of the Minister's presentation and speech. Just a short sort of summary, I think, of where we are at. The future of education is likely to involve greater use of technology, online learning, personalised learning experiences that cater to individual students' needs and abilities, a focus on developing critical thinking and problem-solving skills, and an increased emphasis on lifelong learning to adapt to a changing job market and its demands. Your Excellency, you stole my thunder, because that paragraph was also written by ChatGPT this morning. I didn't think I could have written it better myself. In fact, I know I couldn't have written it better myself. And so it was just a fascinating exercise for me. Jeff and I spoke at a panel yesterday, which was absolutely fantastic, a series of panels. And I have to say, Mum was an educator for 60 years. We've set up the CNN Academy at Abu Dhabi here. Education is really at the core of sort of everything that I do, I hope, as a journalist, as well as in the work that we do with our education initiative here in the UAE. It took less than a couple of seconds for that AI-powered chatbot to burst out what I think is a pretty spot-on answer. So I do just want to start with some reflections on what you all just heard from the Minister here, and how you believe AI will be embedded in the future for education. I can tell you, having been here for a decade, that the first mover advantage that the UAE has in embedding AI across all sectors, not least that of education, which 5 or 6 years ago seemed odd at best, and I'm not a specialist in the sector of education, so it perhaps was less odd to those who are. But I was, fascinated. 6 years on, and with COVID having, played a major part in our lives, it just doesn't seem odd anymore. So let's start with just the reflections on what you just heard from the Minister, sir, and I'll start with you here. And just how you believe AI and other technology will help design our education systems of the future. Just your opening remarks, if you will.
I'm sorry, I will speak in French, because I will be more deep. My English is poor.
French is a much deeper language than that which I have.
Now, for me. D'abord, je me réjouis d'abord de participer aux travaux et au sommet international, et je voudrais à ce propos d'abord féliciter mes frères des Émirats arabes unis, et je suis également vraiment ravi de contribuer à ce sujet. Mais je voudrais juste, pour répondre à votre question, je voudrais juste rappeler que ce que nous avons dans les mains ne date que de 2007. 2007. Et vous avez vu ce qui s'est passé depuis 2007 jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Je vous laisse imaginer ce qui va se passer d'ici 10 ans. Et vous avez évoqué l'intelligence artificielle, qui est aujourd'hui quelque chose qui est en train de transformer notre monde. Je pense que si on revient juste 2 ans avant, personne d'entre nous ne connaissait vraiment ni Teams, ni Zoom. Et la manière dont on a adopté ces nouvelles technologies, ça présage en quelque sorte encore des transformations colossales. Je pense qu'aujourd'hui, si je prends le cas de l'intelligence artificielle, elle est partout et elle sera encore partout. Et ce qu'on va demander à nos jeunes, c'est d'être capables de pouvoir réagir à toute éventualité. Et je suis tenté de dire qu'aujourd'hui, si je prends l'université, ça va être l'université de l'empowerment, l'université de la capacitation, et qu'on doit apprendre à apprendre aux jeunes et non pas forcément les remplir ou les gaver. Et je pense que ce sont des transformations qui sont très importantes. Et tout à l'heure, on discutait, vous avez évoqué ChatGPT, deux manières aujourd'hui de pouvoir faire face à cette situation, soit d'interdire, comme beaucoup d'universités ont commencé à faire, soit changer notre mindset et changer notre mode de réflexion et de dire que les pédagogues que nous sommes, nous devons absolument intégrer ces éléments et en produire et plutôt en tirer le meilleur bénéfice. Et je pense que nous sommes dans cette situation. Si vous regardez l'université depuis ses débuts, il y avait l'université que j'appelais l'université 1.0. On produisait le savoir et on le transmettait. Et tout le monde dans l'amphithéâtre, il est assis comme ce que vous êtes assis aujourd'hui. Et on est passé à l'université 2.0, où il fallait absolument faire des exercices, il fallait faire des travaux pratiques. Et on est passé à l'université 3.0, où il fallait absolument transférer, faire de l'innovation et aussi faire de l'insertion professionnelle comme un outil indispensable et qui devient vraiment important pour l'université. Et puis on est arrivé aujourd'hui à l'université 4.0, tout de suite après l'université 5.0 avec ce qu'on est en train de voir, où l'université devient centrale. La vraie compétition internationale aujourd'hui, elle est dans la formation des ressources humaines. Et nous, dans le Royaume du Maroc, nous sommes confrontés, comme tous les pays africains, à une jeunesse abondante, mais en même temps, une jeunesse qui est très attirée et très sollicitée par l'international. Et je pense que la vraie compétition, c'est de pouvoir intégrer tous ces nouveaux éléments, toutes ces nouvelles technologies, mais changer notre mindset, changer nous les pédagogues. Aujourd'hui, nous voyons que dans la plupart des universités, peut-être un peu les anglo-saxons ont un peu commencé cette étape bien avant, et qu'il faut absolument intégrer le fait que la jeunesse que nous avons n'a rien à voir avec ce que nous avons vécu. Je pense que les gens qui sont de mon âge, nous avons été à l'université, nous avons eu un diplôme, et nous avons travaillé un seul emploi ou deux ou trois dans toute notre vie. Les jeunes aujourd'hui, ils vont d'abord changer 15, 20 fois d'emploi, et puis probablement on est en train de leur dire qu'ils créent le leur, ce qui n'était pas du tout dans la formation de l'université 1.0, 2.0, et qu'aujourd'hui on est dans un monde qui est complètement mouvant. Et si vous regardez les 10 dernières années, les transformations et les ruptures que nous avons vécues, elles sont colossales par rapport aux 100 dernières années. Les 100 dernières années, on a vécu en quelque sorte les années fastes de la rupture scientifique. Et que depuis, et surtout ces dernières années, nous vivons une transformation sur le plan technologique, avec le digital en particulier. Mais maintenant, les 10 prochaines années, je pense que les cartes se redistribuent. Et nous voyons que les pays qui ont la jeunesse, c'est les pays qui ont le plus de chances de pouvoir émerger. Mais il faut absolument arriver à intégrer ces éléments de data science, d'intelligence artificielle. Comme l'a dit mon ami le ministre, c'est que même nous, dans les ministères, nous devons utiliser l'intelligence artificielle, d'abord pour gérer nos ministères, mais également pour anticiper toutes ces transformations et donner en quelque sorte un peu des curricula qui soient au même niveau. Ce que nous faisons là aujourd'hui, par exemple au Maroc, dans ce domaine, et je terminerai par ça, nous avons introduit ce qu'on appelle des lieux dans lesquels on travaille sur des doubles compétences. Ça veut dire qu'un jeune qui fait, par exemple, de l'économie, on lui donne la possibilité d'aller faire du codage pour essayer d'avoir une double compétence. Et aujourd'hui, le digital ou l'intelligence artificielle, je pense qu'elle doit courir, elle doit être dans les veines, elle doit être quelque chose d'intégré dans la formation. On doit réfléchir digital. Et non pas, une fois qu'on a fini le travail, on intègre le digital. Je pense que le digital aujourd'hui devrait être quelque chose qui est en nous-mêmes.
That's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. It's really good to get your perspective from the point of view of the Education Ministry in Morocco. Manuel, let me bring you in here at this point, because you are the Provost of IE University in Spain, so you know, involved in running the education, the physical asset, as it were. Your esteemed colleagues here will weigh in about where they see the future of education, and specifically that of the sort of online education opportunities momentarily. But off the back of what you heard from the UAE Minister and our esteemed colleague from Morocco, just your thoughts on where we are at and where you see the future. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in this room who would argue that the education system as we understand it today, that being the traditional one that most of us will have been through, is fit for purpose.
Yeah. So thank you very much, and thank you for the very kind invitation. Just a quick reflection on AI and ChatGPT and others. Our initial take at an academic institution is that we shouldn't ban this. We shouldn't consider this a tool that shouldn't be used for two fundamental reasons. One is I don't think we should build educational spaces that differ enormously from the work environment that our graduates are going to inhabit. I don't think that's a healthy way of addressing how we build a learning environment for them. And then I think that the banning philosophy, or equating this to plagiarism or to other issues that pop up in the academic space, feeds off a competition mentality. I don't think we should see our students having to compete with these tools, and if we do, they're really going to have a very hard time. And banning them really feeds off that philosophy. You know, they shouldn't use it because they should themselves be able to do what ChatGPT does in 2 seconds, like we just saw. So I think we should find ways, and it's early stages in the assessment of this, of integrating this into our teaching. It will do away with some basic functions of basic writing, probably, basic correlation of facts, things like that. And we need to build training on top of that. As to the future of higher ed, just a very quick reflection. And I wanted to mention 3 forces here, 3 trends that I think are really structural. One, and I think the minister alluded to this before, if you look at the effects of digitalization and technological innovation in the knowledge space, one of the fundamental things that it's done is it's collapsed the value of information arbitrage. And this is not just the case in education, it's across the board, it's across businesses. Those businesses that lived off transferring information from one place to another, really struggling across the board, right? Travel agencies, translation service. I mean, it's a very long list. So if we think in the academic space that we are in the business of transferring information, really we're at risk of going bust very quickly, right? There's really very little value to that. And in fact, ChatGPT and others showcase this. So how do we think about our value add? How do we think about what we bring to the students? And we were just discussing this before the panel. I would argue, I think, it's much more valuable to train people how to think, so it's about skills and decision making. The experience component, it's immensely important, and I don't think people are going to be able to build the experience that we can build for them as academic institutions. There's a lot of learning in experience, in being in different environments, different cultures, etc. I think the convening capacity of universities will be central. Who we sit you with in class, who your professors are, who your classmates are, how we engage with the business world and the government world in a constructive way for students. So I think the convening element, and I think also curation will be very important, although my colleagues might have opinions about this, but I think we still can play a central role in curating and building an arc of training for folks that will be harder for them to do by themselves. The second force I wanted to mention is obsolescence. So if you look at studies on the life expectancy of knowledge acquired through formal education, depends on who you read, but the average life expectancy, the utility of what you learned in university, depending on the field, would range from 20 to 25 years with a little bit of updating here and there. It's roughly on average now 5 years. So what you learned on your first year of studies of, I don't know, digital marketing is obsolete a year after you graduate, because the tools are different, the software is different, the procedures are different. So this puts an immense pressure on us deploying much more surgical, modular training and lifelong learning opportunities. This is linked to something the minister also said about job transitions. People are going to have upwards of 20 or 30 job transitions throughout their lifetime. So they're going to need to be reskilling and updating. And the last thing I wanted to mention, and this is connected to this conference, is the world is changing very fast. If you look, I think we live in an exponentially changing world. So velocity and complexity, I think, are this third force shaping the environment. And I think universities can do a terrific job at teaching foresight, scenarios, and looking at the future, methodologies to try to navigate the future. So I think if they're going to be effective, useful universities in the future, I think they'll be much more about the experience, much more about the skills, much more about lifelong learning, much more modular, and much more focused on the future and on foresight.
That's fascinating. Anant, let me bring you in here. You are, by some accounts, the godfather of MWCS, and for those uninitiated amongst us this morning, that stands for Massive Open Online Course. Some would argue that, sure, that and e-learning is great for ticking the box and getting the micro degrees, but to the point that has just been raised, they don't really empower students with these soft skills that they need to advance in the workplace, to which you say what?
You know, you mentioned the word soft skills, and so connecting both the AI and the online learning through MOOCs. I do want to point out that I have someone in my house, my daughter, Anisha Agarwal. She's a software engineer at Microsoft and OpenAI. And as we speak, she's 6 months out of college. And she's using generative AI and ChatGPT to build tools that automatically write code. And she showed me some code. You know, I've taught at MIT for 34 years in computer science. She showed me the kind of code that it wrote. It is mind-boggling. So we are well past just writing simple essays and simple topics. It is going to write complete pieces of code and also generate tests to test those pieces of code. So what we are seeing is something very, very big. And just like the steam engine revolutionized those countries that had it, the West got the steam engine before my home country, India, and so on. And so those countries took off. Similarly, those countries that try to ban AI and try to not use it in education will fall behind. So those countries that embrace it and harness it as a tool are going to succeed. So that's really important. Coming back to MOOCs. MOOCs were a movement started by several folks here, including Sebastain Thrun, on using digital tools for educating people around the world. In the classroom at MIT, I teach 40 or 50 students. But in my first course on edX, on circuits and electronics, I taught 150,000 students. And more than I would teach in hundreds of years at MIT. And so using digital tools to teach is really, really big. And so we need to bring in AI into these tools as the next step. And just yesterday on edX, we just launched our first professional certificate program in generative AI and ChatGPT, launched yesterday. 2 weeks ago, we launched a $10,000 master's degree in machine learning AI with UT Austin. So we need, as educators and providers, we need to move at super speed, at warp speed, to enable education and reskilling and upskilling on these topics. We have boot camps where we have live instruction that can enable upskilling of entire countries. So we work with many countries where the ministries of education or the governments or universities are using these credentials to upskill populations using digital technology. So I think the message in all of this is that embrace technology, embrace AI, and probably most importantly, rapidly upskill people, not just in normal skills like coding and data science and mathematics and soft skills and so on, but in the latest skills in AI and generative AI and all of the learning technologies. So I think reskilling and upskilling is absolutely critical.
Sebastain, I'll let you pick up reflections of what you've heard so far.
First, thanks for inviting me to this panel. I'm always delighted to be in the region. And I love how nowadays an education panel turns into an artificial intelligence panel. It is the most important invention of our lifetimes. And it'll be able to do 98% of what we do on a daily basis. How could we not ignore this, not build this in? So we're launching lots of stuff in the same space. Udacity is a company that's been working with the region for 8 or so years now. Big programs here, 1 million Arab coders is our program, and many others. And we've always kind of tried to bring in artificial intelligence from the get-go as a key component, but it's never been as real as this year. This year we're going to remember. This is the year when it became real, when like world-class ministers or journalists would go to ChatGPT and produce what they have to say using your computer program. And to me, that's just the beginning. The most important thing to me is the rate of change, right? So 5 years ago, I was invited here to talk about AI by a minister of artificial intelligence, the first one in the world. And I don't think people grasped the magnitude of what's unraveling at the time. Then we invented AI that could replace doctors in diagnosing cancer. Invented AI that would win international painting competitions and can make movies. Now we have AI that can basically write articles about anything we care about. And that is just the beginning. Wait another 5 years and see what's happening. I'm actually really happy to be here because I believe, honestly believe, this is the region with the most positive reception towards artificial intelligence in the world. And that's actually remarkable. I think this is a region that also denied the printing press hundreds of years ago and suffered from that denial. And now is in a situation where things are flipped upside down, where I see the curricula we built here with countries in Nigeria, in Morocco, in many, many places, here in the UAE, in Egypt, to really integrate this modern kind of thinking in day one of the education. And if that's the case, I'm extremely optimistic about what young people in this region will accomplish in the decades to come.
Jeff, let me bring you in here, because you and I had quite a long discussion about the fact that the genie is out of the bottle, right? I mean, we're talking about ChatGPT, and I think I'm right in saying that 1 million people used it in the first 5 days, 100 million have used it over the last, or the next 30 days. I mean, it is the most remarkable pickup. For those who didn't have the benefit of your wisdom yesterday on the panel that you and I were on, your sense of the impact of AI on the education sector, but also your concerns, because I do think it is most appropriate that we do consider concerns. For example, AI doesn't critically think for you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Jeff?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's really an honor. And to sit amongst our partners and some of the people who made this happen and other partners as well. Wonderful opportunity for us to share our ideas together. I mean, I don't know how many of you are feeling disoriented right now. I have been trying to get my head around ChatGPT since it came out in early, well, it came out in November, but I started using it in early December. I was an English major, and the first time I used it, I was like, I've never seen anything like this. And it's not perfect, and there's all sorts of limitations to it. It doesn't do logic well. It doesn't do math well. There's a great paper from MIT, co-sponsored by UCLA, that MIT and UCLA paired up in there. Basically, neurobiologists looking at the brain operations of a human brain and kind of what the competencies are with ChatGPT. And what they say is it's very good at what they call formal linguistic capability. That's the language-making part. And apparently there's part of your brain that does language that's different from cognitive skills and social context. It's doing a really good job at the language part of what our brains does. It doesn't do such a great job with the other pieces yet. But there's a lot of meaning that's attached to language. So even as it recombines patterns of language, it is actually picking up and constituting new patterns of meaning. So I don't have my arms around this. What I have realized myself is that it's a very good writing assistant. You know, I pride myself on being a good writer. I've been writing since I was very young. And it's really neat. I can say certain ideas and it'll spit out. The more that you anchor it to ideas, it'll spit out a really nice articulation of your ideas. It can also add some other ideas in it. But using it as a writing assistant has been very valuable. I wonder what that's going to do to writing. I think there can be some positives and some negatives. I think on the positives, So many people, especially in countries and in regions where there are multiple languages speaking. In Morocco, for instance, the language that you speak says a lot about your status in society. And if you are very fluent in French, you are immediately regarded in a certain way. In the US, if you're very fluent in English, you're regarded in a certain way. The way that you express ideas does not necessarily reflect the quality of your ideas. And if language AI can level the playing field on the expression of ideas, that might not be so bad. That might not be so bad. Where I worried, though, as an English major, is when I would write papers, and even when I think about what I want to say to the company as a CEO, for me, writing and thinking are inseparable. I don't know often what I think until I try to compose it. And if we and students outsource with the writing process the thinking process, I worry a couple things could happen. Our brain muscle that actually is associated with thinking and relating ideas and creating ideas can atrophy. And if the bad guys are creating misinformation to manipulate people using this technology, and everybody else is outsourcing our critical thinking because of this technology, we will be particularly susceptible to manipulation and polarization and things that really destabilize our societies. So among many things like job loss and other things, I think there's a lot of promise here. I think there's a lot of danger here. I think talking about it, coming together, and being very wide-eyed that it is not something we can deny, but it's also not something that I truly understand at this point. And I don't know how well we'll be able to control it, but it can run away from us, I'm concerned. And so we need to be very thoughtful about it.
5 superb minds on this panel, and what, half an hour or just over half an hour to have this discussion is not nearly enough, and we only have 5 minutes left. I've got toddlers, so I'm listening to what you're saying, and I've been considering for some time what the education system will look like for my girls. And so can I just get, for the benefit of this audience, and I'm thinking about sort of the outcomes from World Government Summit, it's so important that we sort of, identify what it is that we've achieved at an event like this, which is absolutely fantastic and full of great sort of inspiration. The elevator pitch from all of you, and I'll start with you, Manuel, at the end there. Just the elevator pitch. What is the future of education as you see it, sitting here today, given what we've just heard? You got 90 seconds.
Okay. Thank you. I'll do that's a very tough question for an academic, 90 seconds. I wanted to give like a Fidel Castro's a 7-hour answer. No, I mean, as I said before, I think it's going to be much more modular, much more tied to the market, which is something that I did not emphasize enough, because on top of all of these trends, the reality of the world today is that we have a huge shortage of people with the right set of skills and knowledge being put out into the market. So if you look at any of the surveys of the companies out there in advanced economies, for example, 70-80% of companies say that they're not finding people with the right set of skills. And we know that roughly the combination is around digital skills, understanding these technologies, leveraging them, using them, and also social skills. We were discussing something before, which is called the empathy economy, sort of this idea that what will not be substituted will be the capacity to engage with others, to manage people, to manage people's feelings. It's still unclear how that's going to land on specific jobs. So I would say an education that is practical, very tied to the job market, modular, that leverages all of these technologies. I think that's the future of the higher ed space. And I think that there's still a lot of room for universities to remain very valuable actors in our societies.
Very, very short. Number one, we are democratizing education, which means every child, every human being will have the same chances. That's really, really important, because it's not been the case in the past. And number two, and the final point is, everyone will educate and train ourselves all the times. It's not going to be the case that we've turned 18 and it's over, or 21 is over, or 14 is over. If you're 50, if you're 60, even if you're 120, we will continue to learn and train ourselves for the indefinite future. These are the two different changes that are happening, and they're going to be absolutely massive.
I hear the democratization. I worry about the inclusivity of a system which is built on technology and relies on connectivity going forward. Anant.
Just think back to the calculator. In India, growing up, there's no calculator growing up. We memorized math tables. I could recite tables 20 times 20. Now I can't do 2 times 5. But then when the calculator came out, all those skills that I had of memorizing tables went away. Instead, we taught how to think. We used the calculator as a tool. And then we thought about higher level thinking and logic and so on, and not the menial multiplying numbers. Think of AI in the same way, where use that as a tool, at least for now. And I'm not a very good writer. I can speak okay, but not a good writer. I'm really excited that now AI will democratize, will democratize writing. And so people with bad accents or different accents in different countries, it will level it. So now what will be important is social skills, how you interact with other human beings, skills, also how you empathy, critical thinking, higher level thinking, those are the things. So as a nation or as a world, it's really important to adopt these tools quickly and then think about what's our value add as human beings. And if we cannot think our value add as human beings, then we should just cease to exist.
About the job as a journalist, to your point, all of that is, will make much better journalists, I hope, going forward as well. Jeff,
I think clearly what we're talking about is a world that's changing faster. I think the skill that many people, all of us will need is how do you adapt to change? I think a job that will not go away among many is the job of a leader. So teaching people leaderships, which is about leading people through change, is going to be critical. And it's as much about anticipating the change as it is about knowing how people feel going through it. For everybody else, like your kids or anybody's kids, I'd say learning agility will be critical. So I'd say leadership agility, learning agility, dealing with the world of change and staying connected to the humanity that is around us is going to be critical.
Fabulous, Jeff. Thank you very much. Minister, I'm going to leave the last word to you. We are out of time, but you do have 90 seconds.
D'abord, personnellement, je crois que l'université va être l'université tout au long de la vie. Je pense on en a parlé tout à l'heure. Et qu'elle va être plutôt l'université de la production du savoir et de son partage, mais elle va être l'université plutôt de la capacitation individuelle. En arabe, le terme est beaucoup plus profond, c'est tamkin. Et je pense que nous sommes dans cette situation et que les sciences humaines et sociales vont faire les leaders de demain. Parce que, justement, comme on l'a dit tout à l'heure, que les sciences humaines et sociales, c'est ce qui va permettre, en quelque sorte, un peu d'analyser et d'utiliser les outils au bon moment et dans les bons endroits. Mais moi, je suis confiant, parce qu'avec tous les défis que nous sommes en train d'affronter aujourd'hui, avec toutes les transformations, si on regarde l'histoire de l'éducation, l'histoire de l'université, elle a toujours su faire face, et qu'aujourd'hui, nous traversons des transformations colossales. Mais je voudrais profiter de cette occasion, parce que nous avons beaucoup de responsables. Nous avons beaucoup parlé des soft skills, que personnellement, je ne souhaite plus appeler soft, parce qu'on croit toujours que c'est facile, mais plutôt de power skills. Et les power skills sont beaucoup plus compliqués, parce que ça nécessite des formations qui, des fois, sont de bas âge. Ça veut dire que dès la naissance, on doit former les jeunes à faire de la musique, à faire de la culture, du sport, etc. Et c'est ce qui fait que les jeunes sont beaucoup plus agiles, plutôt résilients, plutôt adaptables. Et je pense qu'aujourd'hui, on a l'occasion, dans les universités, en tout cas dans le monde universitaire, de travailler comment former aux power skills en très peu de temps. Nous avons des jeunes qui viennent à 18, 19 ans, 20 ans, et que nous avons 3 ou 5 ans ou plus pour essayer de former pour ces formations de power skills, alors que ça nécessite, j'allais dire, 15 ans, 20 ans, etc. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, nous avons beaucoup de jeunes qui viennent de familles modestes, et comment leur donner ces savoirs le plus rapidement possible pendant leur parcours. Et je pense que nous allons, l'humanité va pouvoir gagner et va pouvoir aussi optimiser ses ressources.
Thank you. Reflecting on what I've just heard, agility, the power to be and adopt and be adaptable, and this idea of resilience. That's what I'm taking out of this, is such a focus for a new generation and a new generation of education systems. It's been absolutely fascinating listening to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I feel very lucky and very grateful that I'm living and working in a country where we are having these discussions in such an atmosphere of engagement and positivity. I hope that you join me in that. I know you will, and I wish you the best, and good luck with everything that you do. Thank you very much indeed for everybody today.
Thank you.